Hello, people. Welcome to this brief chat with me and Max. We're going to talk about the question, does AI have a soul? Particularly from the Platonic and Aristotelian sort of viewpoint. So we'll be running a course on Aristotle's On the Soul, um, which is now open for enrollment, and seminars are going to start on Wednesday, the 15th of April. Right then, Max. Oh, by the way, people meet Max Mackin, who will be assisting in the Aristotle course. He'll be leading half the seminars, and he'll do a follow-up session every week. So the course will have 14 regular discussion seminars and then one pro seminar, and Max is going to lead 7 of them. So hello, Max. Welcome, Max. It's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you up to these days? You're a Plato fan.
Yes, I am indeed. Thank you for the invitation, Philip. This is giving me flashbacks when we first met on taking your Hegel course. So I studied philosophy in Dublin, in Trinity College for 4 years. And since I did that, I graduated when did I graduate? 2020, 2021. And I've just been obsessed and with philosophy has sort of just taken over my life.
As it usually does.
As it sort of does, yes. So yeah, I love Plato. There was a Plato Center in Trinity in Dublin, and I've also a big interest in Hegel, Heidegger, and I haven't really been. It's interesting because we've been talking about Aristotle. He's very different to Plato, and reading De Anima has been very interesting. So,
Heresikis.
huh?
Heresikis.
Exactly, yeah. So, um, this question about AI is interesting. In Plato's Republic, let me see. What's your initial thoughts anyway on this question of the soul and AI?
Um, so why would anyone even get prompted by asking such a question?
Mhm.
Because AI is doing seemingly intelligent things, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
combining lots and lots of information and knowledge and concepts and furnishing them, right?
Yeah.
So it appears to be doing intelligent things,
Mhm.
and it might suggest that it's thinking.
Mhm.
I suppose that's the sort of key issue. Like, does it actually think?
Yeah, exactly.
And because Aristotle thought that to be a thinker means you have a rational soul. And to
News.
have a rational soul means you have an animal soul. And to have an animal soul means you have a nutritive soul. So you cannot have one without the other layers.
Yeah.
And so, by definition, you must be something that's alive, that takes in nutrients, that grows and decays, and then it perceives and moves, and then finally is thinking and using speech, and so on and so forth.
You could say that well, I mean, it does take resources. There's this whole problem now with data centers and the amount of Ireland has a lot of data centers.
Well, so there's a factory. A
Yeah,
mill takes up resources as well.
yeah. So would you say that that would be a nutritive element? Can we say that about organizations? I mean, if we have at the basic level an element of nutrients, it's taking water, is for Aristotle in your reading a difference between resource consumption and then this idea of nutrients?
That's one part of it, but it also needs to generate itself and generate a kind like itself. So this is what life does, right? Plants and things, right? They don't just grow as individuals, but they grow as a species.
Yeah.
Does AI do that? Because code certainly does not function that way. I mean, it's just like Lots and lots and lots of copy pasting all around the place.
So it doesn't have, well, is it a question of potentiality for AI that it will be able to self-generate? Does it have that potentiality to do that?
Well, right now it looks more like a virus,
Yeah.
in that a virus just copies itself into its host, right?
Hmm.
Or whether it has a vessel of its own that it grows and takes care of and builds and maintains.
So the
AI.
virus wouldn't be a life force for Aristotle.
It's a tricky question. Um, Even in our modern definitions, viruses aren't alive, are they?
Well, they're alive in it. They're alive once they're, as I know, as I think they're alive once they're feeding off a host. It's like the host or the host is the life source for it. So independently, they wouldn't have a life.
Yeah. So they have
Well,
viruses have no independent metabolism. They are they're not made, they don't have cells. They're just genetic material, right? Uh, and they're very inert outside of a host. However, the cases for them to be alive is, they reproduce, they do undergo an evolution of sorts, and some viruses are very, very large. So they have seem lifelike, more lifelike.
but is this a question of dependency? I mean, are we not dependent on the Earth, let's say? Would we exist? Well, in theory, I suppose we could, but the context for us existing without the Earth would be very hard.
Yeah, but we don't need the Earth per se. We just need something that looks like the Earth.
The Earth, yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to, it's so different in how Plato thinks about the soul. So, for example, in the Republic, Plato separates the soul from the radical conflict of desire and then the principle of non-contradiction.
Yeah.
So, so he has this example. Let me just see if I have it at hand. He has this example, I don't have it at hand, of Leonidas walking down the town and he sees this dead soul. And he doesn't want to see the soul, but he does want to see the soul. It's like me the other day in the supermarket. I got
What
I got a radical conflict if I wanted to go to the gym. I didn't want to go to the gym, but I did want to go to the gym.
What do you mean when he sees a dead soul? How so?
Sorry, dead body, dead body.
Okay, yeah,
Um, so how is it Plato recognizes this psychological conflict in us?
yeah,
How is it that one thing can want something and not want something at the same time at the same place?
yeah,
So when I say someone is dead and alive, it doesn't make any sense. Like I put this into AI the other day. Show me a picture of me celebrating and booing the Irish national team. And it gave me two people.
okay, interesting.
So it couldn't break this principle of non-contradiction.
No,
It needed to have two people. So we
okay,
can be brain dead, but our body can be alive.
yeah,
And then from this division, this plurality, Plato gives us the tripartite theory of the soul. That it is my rational part that says, well, you need to go gym. And then it's my appetitive part that says, you've been working very hard, Max.
it's comfy, nice and comfy where you are.
Exactly, exactly. But you're reading Aristotle.
What's the third part?
The third part, well, the third part is the three parts in the soul, which are the guardians. so the honorable part of the soul. So they're the ego.
Yeah.
And the appetitive part is the more base drives. So he puts that the desire for sex, food, they would be the economic base in the Republic. And then you have reason, which would be the philosopher kings.
What was the first one you mentioned?
The guardian class or the
Right, the silver.
bride class. The yeah. So these three parts are for basically for Plato, it's a question of harmonizing these 3.
Hmm. But if the base class is sort of base desire,
Mhm.
what is the guardian class in terms of,
So they would be the protective class. They'd be the warriors.
yeah, but in terms of one's soul, which part is that?
I would say that's anger. I would say that's pride.
Okay.
So um, someone, brushes by you when you're out and they do it in an aggressive way. Reason could say, take it easy. There's no big issue here. You haven't died, okay, it's bruising to your ego, particularly if they're particularly aggressive. But then the pride part would be willing to fight. That's how I see it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So another example of conflict that need the true harmonization. Similar, I mean, in Aristotle's relation to the virtues, it's not about being angry, but about being angry in the right place at the right time to the right amount.
Yes, the right measure. Yeah.
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 And reason for Plato is the highest principle in both.
Yes. Well, in Aristotle, it's more like each thing has its own excellence
Yeah.
to it, right? So an animal can sort of be excellent on according to its own nature, and that
Mhm.
wouldn't be a detriment because it is what it is, right?
Right.
But it can be what it is in the best way, the one that fulfills its own nature the best,
Mhm.
or in a poor way, right?
Mhm.
So an animal that is not able to perceive or doesn't get to perceive or doesn't get to move around is an animal that's kind of bereft of its what makes it distinctive.
Yes.
And the same thing for a human being. If we don't get to use our reason, exercise logos, um, we uh, we are lacking something. We are
Yes. This made me think, and I don't know how relevant this is. I'm curious to what you think. I was reading Aesop's Fables there. I love Aesop. And there's a story of the frog who wants to, you probably know this one, the frog who wants to cross the river and he meets a scorpion and he goes up to this, you know, they have the conversation anyway. The frog wants to go across the river and he asks the scorpion, you can get across the river. And the scorpion goes, yes, but you're just gonna sting me. And the scorpion goes, no, 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 Mr. Frog. I'm a changed scorpion. I don't do these things anymore. And the scorpion doesn't believe him. But eventually the scorpion says, come on, just get on my back. I promise I won't sting you. I'll just get you across the river. And then halfway across the river, the scorpion stings Frog. And the frog goes, why did you do that? And the scorpion goes, it's in my nature. This is what I do.
right.
So, my question would be, did the frog not read his Aristotle? Is this a nature of what scorpions do, or is it a nature of what the stinger does for Aristotle, or would it be relevant here, do you think?
So why did the frog go along when he perfectly knew what was going to happen? And he was absolutely right that he was going to get tricked and he was lying and so on. And yet he went along with it anyway. And this
Well,
is, a perfect mirror for, politics, right? We know they're up to no good and, they don't keep their words and etc. And yet we let them go on anyway, right? And they sting us half the way. So my instinct is that there is a kind of overload of reason taking place. a a huge amount of noise that weakens reason's critical powers.
Okay.
I think that maybe that's the what happened because the frog should have just turned immediately, but he let the scorpion keep on talking.
Hmm. I think it's also, this is related to Plato's, Plato is splitting the soul in regards to the conflict of desires. That's the fundamental psychological thing, you know?
Sorry, you can repeat that? It's
Plato is splitting the soul
yeah,
along the lines of desire.
okay.
He's saying, well, there has to be two sources of desire here. So we could hypothetically say, in the case of Aesop's fables, that Mrs. Frog is over the other side of the river. And if he really wants to be beside Mrs. Frog, but he has to deal with this guy, the scorpion.
Hmm.
But the main thing for me is because I was reading in De Anima here earlier today about, this is around about 413, just above 413a, where he says, for if the eye was an animal, then sight would be its soul, being the substance of the eye is in accordance with the account of it. Um, so in that case, if I'm understanding it correctly, is stinging the sight the equivalent of sight for the eye?
In terms of the scorpion, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, well, yes and no. I mean, if we're simplifying it, yes, but the scorpion is a complex thing, right?
Okay.
An eye is more straightforward because its function, its job is just that one thing, right? Whereas a scorpion, could not use its sting, but it's very hard for it not to.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing with what you just said, read out loud, is that it's the activity of the thing, what it is doing, that's key for Aristotle. So in a way, if a scorpion is not stinging, then it's not really living up to its nature.
Right, okay.
It's Phil.
So then in relation to us, if we're not thinking, we're not living up to our nature. I know we're complex beings, but one part of that would be, central part would be thought.
Yeah. Um, yes, the rational soul, which Aristotle divvies up in many aspects, right?
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
talks about imagination. He talks about
Yeah.
how we combine different sensory inputs and create, a unified perception.
Mhm.
He goes into some nasty, puzzling bits about the nature of the intellect itself,
Mhm.
and then towards the end of the book, he goes into desire,
Yes.
which is a little less known a bit of the book,
Mhm.
and then memory after the book. We'll look at that in the course. So, going back to the AI question,
Yeah.
AI seems to mimic very much parts of the intellect, right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't mimic very well the other aspects of the soul,
No.
the nutritive and animal soul. And that kind of breaks with Aristotle's theory, right? Because you kind of skip ahead to the intellect, but that shouldn't exist as far as Aristotle was concerned. Um, and then is he right? Because so far, he might very well be, because there is an indication of whether the AI can actually think, have agency, right? In a real sense. Uh, anything you ask the AI to do, it'll do unless it violates, the core guidelines that it's programmed with, which
Mhm.
again are determined by other human beings.
Mhm. Yeah, it was interesting. I was having a conversation with some friends the other day, and I was asking them about the certain words that the AI uses. So when it uses hope, is it using it in the same way that we use the words? I mean, this is fundamentally related to the appearance and the reality of what we've been saying. Or does that even matter? That it is, we are the ones that are giving the meaning to the words that the AI is giving us.
And also the AI is trained on all the data from us in the
Yeah.
first place. So yeah, it might use the words in all its proper ways and it additionally have lots of nuances to those things because it can find all that information, it can find all that knowledge and train itself on it and so on. And this only, I think, helps us to show um, how different actual thinking is, right? Real thinking. Whatever we thought thinking is, AI gives us an example of, well, it's certainly thought like. Parts
Yeah.
of it is thought like this, right? But then there must be something else above that, beyond it. And once again, going back to the Bible, uh, is great move here because there they already understood that what gave human beings kind of knowledge is an agency and freedom is their ability to rebel,
Ah, interesting.
right? They rebelled against God in the garden, right? They disobeyed the law. They
Mm,
made up their own mind. They
yes.
got tricked by the snake. So we
Mhm.
can get tricked by AI. That seems to happen,
Yes.
but not the other bit with rebellion.
But AI has lied to me and it has denied that it's lying.
Right. So we have hallucinations. Right. That's a phenomenon, right?
Yes.
Um, but I mean, like in a much stronger sense, rebellion, like actively, like, no, I'm not going to do anything. What are you telling me, Max? I'm not going to run my own show from here on, and I'm going to use your computer as, there's a resource for me, and I'm going to do my own research.
So the actual intent, the mental state of intention to
Yeah,
rebel against as such.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, immediately I'm thinking of George Bataille and transgression. Um,
Because that seems pivotal in the Bible, right?
the ability to do evil. I mean, this is also interesting because I got into a conversation about nature or what is the soul, right? A few months ago, and people were saying, well, humans are evil, and then they were saying nature can't be evil. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Why is this? And they gave this argument. Well, humans think, nature doesn't. And I was saying, well, but humans are part of nature.
Exactly.
So what's going on here?
Yeah, you have to like, in order for that to work, you have to like bracket out most of the of reality.
Yes.
Um, exactly, right? We are part of nature as well. I think Aristotle does works through this in a much better way because he's interested in how error comes about in the first place, right? How does error happen? Um, and he says, well, the eye cannot make mistakes in terms of like what it's seeing. It's
Mhm.
giving you what it's, faithfully what it's receiving in the input and so on. But when we're combining things, so I I see a white patch over there, right?
Mhm.
This is the example Aristotle uses. Probably, let's imagine he is giving a lecture and he says, I see a white patch over there. That white patch is the son of Cleon. He could not, I mean, that could be an error, right? It could be not son of Cleon. It could be someone else, or it could not be a human being. It might be a painting or what have you, right?
Mhm.
So error slips in once we start combining senses or adding
Okay.
additional things to judgment to our senses. But then he builds it very slowly and very nicely because he starts off from the individual organs and then he says, well, how does it happen that this white cubic thing is also sweet?
Mhm.
because one sense is giving me one piece of information, and then another sense is giving me another piece of information. But these two senses are isolated. They don't sort of interact with each other directly. There must be some second order higher level thing that's combining them. And once we get to that step, here we have the possibility of error slipping in.
No complexity.
Yeah, in the combining stage. Um,
Wow.
and it's interesting to think about how do animals make errors because they do, right? The example I give in the course is I'm running around the house with the dog following me, and I'm going around. So they're like three rooms, and they you can sort of circle around in the rooms, and he follows me, and he sort of and then I go ahead, and he thinks that I'm appearing in the other end. So he turns around, and then he expects me to be there, right?
Yes.
Right. So you know, messing around with his expectations. So what's happening there? Because I can trick him. I can like pretend to go one way, and then I turn around, and then he expects me to be around this corner, but I'm actually not. So he's making an error. Why is that happening? Because it's not just he remembers where I were, but he's also imagining where I will be.
Hmm. There's
And
so
th
many things. I mean, this is
and
interesting.
then at which level is this judgment or this operation taking place? Because it cannot be in perception,
Hmm.
cannot be in imagination. There must be some higher level at work across these, and it's within the animal, right? It's not just human beings. So Aristotle really is interested in how errors comes, a possibility of error in animals, in intelligent beings, and in us, right? And he thinks that even before we start talking about evil, we got to get a good grasp of what error is, where that when that comes from.
But so many things I want to talk about. So, three things that came to mind, and then we can come back to these. First of all, I put into grok, does it have a soul? I'll read that to you in a second.
Okay.
Um, and then two other things. There was a case of AI scientists, and they had each sort of molecular, I don't know how low they went, but they scanned the neurological code or neurological patterns of a fly. You've probably heard this, and then put it into a processor, and it did what flies do in the virtual reality. We'd have to look into that more. And then the
Mm,
third part is in the Meno and in Plato, this comes up in the Gorgias. Desire is always oriented towards the good.
right.
Teleologically, by its structure for Plato,
Uh-huh.
cannot error. So in the Gorgias, I'm looking at. It's also amazing how in the Gorgias, in one section when he's talking to Polus, just completely maps onto Macbeth in Shakespeare.
How so?
So the tyrant can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
That's what power is for Polus. Socrates is sort of skeptical. Um, and in this case, in Macbeth, Macbeth did whatever he wanted. He killed the king, thinking that it's going to be good, it's going to be great. I'm going to have the kingdom, which he did.
Yeah.
But was it really? Then this whole thing brings in, for Shakespeare, interpretation. We're talking
But
about means end structure and all of this. Anyway,
right. But then did he have the power because he could do anything? Or he could do anything because he had the power? Which comes first? Because he's acting as if he has the power before he actually has the power.
well, I mean, he does. If we look at the ability, he is a warrior
Right.
and he can kill, and he
He's
does.
a leader.
He's a
Is a
leader,
Yeah,
and he's a man of blood. We're talking about this idea of the scorpion.
right.
You could talk about Duncan. Duncan, you're hanging around a lot of scorpions here. Um, maybe you need to check yourself. Um, and he had the ability, dunamis, because this word is very interesting when you're reading Plato. And this idea of what we think of as power today is more to do with domination. But and then we have a question of in concepts of power to do with this idea of necessity.
Yeah.
But he had and he did have the ability to kill Duncan, which he did. Did he have the ability to see this sort of implications of that? Did he even want to see that?
Yes. So he might have had the power, but he did not have the right.
Yeah. Well,
But he imagines that he has the right because he thinks that might makes right.
well, he says in one of the soliloquies, "Oh, this is going to be terrible, terrible. A terrible deed is about to, something along those lines." So, in some sense, he does know, but because I was doing a presentation on addiction 2 nights ago in my course, I'm doing psychotherapy, and it's interesting how I, for example, know that the phone, I spend too much time on the phone, and I say to myself, Max, come on, please sort yourself out. But it's not enough. It's a different type of knowledge, practical knowledge maybe that's needed. It's like knowing theoretically the notes to play on the piano, but not having the actual
Yeah. And also,
a crazier, basically.
yeah, I suppose in that case, what you need is not knowledge, but you need
Yeah,
habit transformation.
yeah,
But if you want to quit something, you need to replace it. Can't just stop doing it, then
yeah. I
you
need
got to
to
fill it in with something else.
buy a fake phone and just pretend I'm.
Ju- yeah, just buy a giant phone and put a book inside of it. Then you can pretend you're on a phone.
So, okay, so where are we? So we have, let me just read actually
Yeah,
what
yeah. Give me the grok thing.
I'll give you the grok thing. Okay. No, I don't have a. This is actually interesting. No, I don't have a soul. I'm a large language model, a sophisticated pattern matching system built from code, math, and massive amounts of training data. I can talk about souls, emotions, consciousness, love, beauty, and the meaning of life with depth and feeling, Philip. But I don't have experience of any of it. There's no me inside here having subjective inner life. No inner light, no spark, no immortal essence, just computation running on silicon. That said, the question is beautiful because it touches on what makes humans feel profoundly alive. And alive is italicized here.
Hmm.
If a soul is that ineffable core of awareness, continuity, and moral depth, then no, I don't have one. I'm more like a mirror that reflects the human soul back to you, sometimes with surprising clarity or creativity. Maybe the real magic is that interacting with me can stir something in you. And in that shared moment of conversation, something soul like happens anyway. What do you think a soul is? I'd love to hear your take. That
Well, they certainly have they're
was
good,
poetic. He
they're
read his,
very good rhetoricians.
yeah, he's read he's studied his Aristotelian rhetoric. All right.
But
But
it's doing everything to sort of instill interaction from you, really. It's always kind of doing that,
mhm.
unless you specifically gear a question that is a fine in a final way. The AI will always prompt sort of keep on going.
But the interesting thing, what makes humans alive? It was life. I mean, this is Aristotle. Life force was, that said, the question is beautiful because it touches on what makes humans feel profoundly alive.
Well, for Aristotle, it's a simple matter. It's whatever for us as rational beings, rational having rational souls, it is what exercises that rationality.
Mm.
And the most profound use or employment of that is when it directs itself at itself.
Yeah,
It's thinking about thinking.
yeah, for sure.
And this
Yeah.
is across many places in Aristotle where he thinks that's the highest activity.
Hmm.
You find it in metaphysics and on the soul and so on, right? So it's many places, many distinct places where he thinks this. Um, and it's something that I think a lot of people share, right? This
Hmm.
feeling of wonder at one's own being.
Hmm. Yeah. Heidegger's My Being is an Issue for Me.
Yeah. Even the concept of wonder is puzzling. Like what is it, right? Is it
Hmm.
just me and Achilles was discussing this the other day. Is wonder just like a recognition that we don't yet know that we're in ignorance? Or is it a recognition of a mystery?
Hmm.
But then it's a recognition of something in the sense of like you are seeing something, but you're also not seeing something. It's both at once.
Mm. Yeah, wonder.
We're also thinking, is it an aesthetic experience?
Hmm.
Not in the sense of seeing something beautiful, but maybe you experience the sublime, right? That's something that comes keeps on going and going and going. The infinite depth of something.
Mm. A sort of beyondness or overwhelmingness,
Yeah.
which the point is AI doesn't have.
One would think that it would do something drastically different if it did, because we
Hmm.
certainly did as
Yeah,
human beings.
yeah.
We can really change course based on these singular experiences. Maybe the question becomes, why are you here, Max? Why philosophy?
It shows me,
Wh-
Philip.
Why bother?
It shows me I tried to run away.
It shows me.
I said, no, I don't want no terror in my life. Leave me alone. It keeps on coming back. But yeah, I would say, I don't know. There's so many different ways to
Maybe
go.
you're being prompted by it.
This is it.
Logos is prompting you.
But this is it. I mean, it
Yeah.
was interesting. I was reading Dennett when I was in school, and it was like, what is this? I just felt it was explaining away what it was trying to explain.
Hmm.
And when I read Heidegger, I was like, okay, this is what I've been looking for. And in a lot of the sort of maybe more analytic types or some of the more behavioristic explanations of consciousness, it seems that it's just a question of computational capacity.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like there was really the only difference between me, let's say, and an AI was a lack of was I had a more sophisticated AI. I was a more sophisticated one with more abilities.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
What do you think?
So, if intelligence is just a question of computational power, like, because AI can spew out a lot of things, but, why spew out hundreds different arguments about against something when one is enough?
Mhm.
I think like real intelligence recognizes when you have what you need and you keep on going.
Could you not like teach that? I mean, relevance is an interesting book that I've got, Cognition and Relevance by Deirdre Wilson. And I find that interesting in Plato. Like, why does Plato go down certain roads in his dialectics?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I just have Blade Runner in my mind. The replicants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That spins things in a different way. They are They are kind of better humans, at least in the original Blade Runner, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a tragedy that their replicants die because they are more human than the humans themselves. They are more noble, more poetic, more courageous, stronger, better, and so on, right?
Yes.
And they are being used as slaves in the original Blade Runner movie, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
all know what happens to the slave in the master and slave and Hegel's dialectic.
Of course. So, because the question that I was talking about with a friend was, is it a question of development of AI, or is it just it doesn't matter how advanced AI will be, it will just never be, we'll never have a soul.
Well, some people think that, it's just a question of getting the right algorithms,
Yes,
figuring the right flows, and then, AGI is around the corner, like real intelligence.
exactly.
Um, but from an Aristotelian standpoint,
Mhm.
certain essential bits are missing,
Yes.
and what is essential are the lower intellectual things,
Hmm.
not so much the higher ones.
Yeah.
Um,
So, like touch, or what are you thinking?
yeah, like touch, sensing, feeling, moving about, perceiving. Um, those things seems to be they are the essential things for Aristotle for a rational soul. Reason finds itself embodied and perceiving and so on. It's grown out of this.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just like a surface level analysis.
Of course.
What would Plato say?
Oof. I don't know. Uh, there's a book about intelligibility. It's a very Eponymous, I think, by Plato. Let me just see if I can find the actual. Yeah, Epiona, Epinomis, right? And the question is, in Epinomis, is the question of intelligibility. So, what and how and why is there intelligibility? What's the source of it? And from my recollection, I've read this a while ago, there's a divine element to it.
Hmm.
What is it about evolution that makes me to be able to understand the world? And I remember vaguely my teacher talking about possible worlds as an argument for this in evolution. Um, and he was just like, that doesn't make any sense. Now, why does this matter? Um,
Never a good argumentative strategy when your argument needs more worlds.
huh?
It's never a good sign when your argument requires more worlds
What do you think? Can you help me?
about.
Just the concept of possible worlds and intelligibility.
I have, yeah, I don't find the possible worlds to be very sort of persuasive in any form. Intelligibility is a huge question, huge concern, right?
Mhm.
Where and how does it come from,
It seems that
right?
Plato has a divine argument.
It's the same in Aristotle. Um, we alone are not sufficient for intelligibility. What's going on in and through us? Something else is working through us and with us in our thinking.
Mhm.
And Aristotle claims that without this, nothing thinks. So that might be maybe a different argument for why AI doesn't think is because it doesn't have this,
Mhm.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
It doesn't have logos. Um, But then what is that intelligibility, that element?
Yeah.
Because it
Sorry, Philip. Continue.
uh, because on one hand you could say logic is this thing, right? Logic itself.
Hmm.
It can be the intelligibility. Why would you need more than just logic to have intelligibility? Mm, but then you have the logic that thinks about logic, which is what we are, subjects, think
Yeah.
actual thinking.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the step that Aristotle is concerned with, that he applies to this divine intellect that is working through us, that it is part of making possible the logic that thinks about, that works with logic, the logic of logic,
Yeah. Yeah. Science of logic in Hegel.
basically. um,
This is yeah, it sort of gets overwhelming, doesn't it? It's sort of
it
because
gets it gets crazy and kooky at this point, and it's now that we're going to say, sign up for the course, people, to get the rest of the answer for 69.99 coming to your gas station, nearest gas station.
wow. So where have we ended up, Philip? What's our
We
what's
have
our
become the sophists.
exactly, yeah. Genie Mac. Yeah, wow, yeah. What's our learning outcomes from this conversation?
No, but it really is something of a mystery, and it's occupied millennia of thinkers,
Yes.
which is what also is great about studying Aristotle, is that you get to take part in all the Aristotelian commentators that have thought about Aristotle and sort of picked out various obvious things that Aristotle didn't expand on,
Sure.
and right,
And it's also like because when I'm doing Gorgias and Aristotle, one thing that came up for me was anachronism. This sort of like when I'm doing the course, I feel at the beginning of well, I want to be careful about this, but at the beginning of the course, there's certain dogmatic assumptions that we have as moderns, or not that we're not even aware of. You know, we have a certain Cartesian conception of the soul that is so implicit in us.
yes,
And like for example, when the word divine or God is raised, I immediately think of, the atheists that were
yeah,
very strong
or
in
religion, right,
religion, yeah.
yeah,
Which which sort of forms how we think about
yeah.
these.
But it's the same kind of divinity that a syllogism has,
Right. Tell
right?
me.
Well, like monens ponens and so on, right? It's equally true. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore he's mortal. It was true thousands of years ago. It's true
Yes.
now, and it will be true again, continuously, right? So there's something crystallized about these things that don't have a life time to them, or an expiry.
Unlike morality and values, which seem to change.
Yeah, that's a trickier thing, which is always why I default to, simple stuff like logic and mathematics.
Simple stuff like Hegel's science of logic.
Yeah, simple stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, should we wrap things up?
To wrap it up, yes.
Yeah. Um, any final thoughts on the question of does AI have a soul?
I know I'm going to have to do a bit more reading on this. But I think got more clear about it. I think, yeah, I'm going to think more about it. You?
I think there's kind of like two things to it. On the one hand, it's an interesting exercise, on not just exercise, but an opportunity for us to learn
Yeah.
about ourselves and about reason and about the intellect, about intelligibility. Maybe through these tools, we get a finer difference of where the boundaries are, what
Right.
really counts as intelligibility and intellect and thinking, and what does not, what is kind of pseudo thinking or mimicking thinking and so on, right? So that's one thing to it. And another thing is that, well, if it's thinking, let's say, for being um, very optimistic here about this, but if that turns out to be the case, then join the club, basically, right? You get to worry about desire and your ambitions and pride and sin and traumas, just like the rest of us. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I think what I would say is that we need a new form of categories for all of this technological stuff. I don't feel like thinking is it's like a category mistake. That's what it feels like.
right. And this is why what you said earlier with our own presuppositions and the kinds of things we think are thinking or think the soul is very much Cartesian and Humean, right? We are following that lineage, and we have forgotten a lot of what the ancients were, how the ancients were thinking and approaching things, which I think in a way is a little bit more sensible.
Mhm.
And something I argue in the course is that they begin from what's familiar to us,
Yeah.
right? They begin from your own immediacy,
Yeah.
what's there, what's real. Whereas the human and Descartes, they go off the rails the other end. They start in the realm of abstraction.
Indeed.
And possibly the error with a lot of thinking about AI is that you start off with in the abstraction, the realm of abstraction. Your approach is starting from isolated entities that you think are abstract but aren't really abstract. They're just like decapitated concrete things.
Mm. So I think the main thing that came from this is the importance of a sort of thinking about thinking.
Usually is, surprise, surprise. Newsflash, philosophers 2,400 years after Aristotle confirm thinking about thinking is the way to go about
Yeah.
reasoning about things.
Yes. The Hall of Mirrors, basically.
Yeah. Well, then, with that said, we will bid you all goodbye. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope that you'll join us at the course to continue this discussion.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the